Sega Saturn.
Hello everyone and welcome to Retro Dad and Modern Lad. Today we're going to be looking at Sonic games on the Sega Saturn, including release games, unreleased, homebrew and cameos. Perhaps one of the stranger decisions made by Sega was releasing its new Sega Saturn console without a new mainline Sonic game. In fact, the Sega Saturn didn't get a new mainline Sonic game created for it at all. With Sonic Xtreme not going to be ready for the Christmas 1996 period, Sega decided to release an enhanced version of its Sega Mega Drive game Sonic 3D Blast, and release both versions in November 1996. The main differences between the versions were the Sega Saturn version looks graphically enhanced, with added effects in water and bridges, new weather effects, improved textures, and features fully 3D bonus stages, which are based on the Sonic 2 bonus stages from the Mega Drive game. The game has a good variety of levels and the music is a particular highlight. For the Mega Drive, it was a good attempt to bring Sonic into 3D with its isometric view. However, for the Sega Saturn 3D Sonic game, people were expecting better. The game suffers from repetitive gameplay, loose controls, and does not have the magic of the 2D games. The reason for this is likely because Sonic Team only assisted with the game and it was developed by Traveller's Tales. What we have is an average to good game, but it's definitely not the 3D exclusive platform game the Sega Saturn owners wanted at the time, or the console needed to help compete with the Sony PlayStation and Nintendo 64. The bonus stages gave Sega Saturn owners their first glimpse of what a 3D Sonic game could look like on the Sega Saturn, and it looked absolutely fantastic. Despite the main game being developed by Traveller's Tales, the bonus stages, which take inspiration from the bonus stages in Sonic 2, are produced by Sonic Team. Being able to play these bonus stages has also been made a lot easier by Bo Bales, who has created a mod patch which allows you to play them one after another instead of having to find them in the levels. As well as looking brilliant, they are also really fun to play, and the 3D model of Sonic looks really cool. I would definitely recommend you play these bonus stages, although they are a little easy. Next up for Sonic games released on the Sega Saturn is Sonic R, which was released in 1997 and also developed by Traveller's Tales. Graphically, Sonic R looks stunning for the Sega Saturn with transparency effects, and instead of the famous 32-bit pop-up that plagued many games, Sonic R uses a 12-layer transparency that fades objects in, adding more detail the closer you get to an object. Similar to Sonic 3D Blast, the game received mixed reviews from the magazines with questions on the controls, a lack in depth, and Marmite-like music, with people either loving the songs or hating them. Personally, I am a fan of the music, and I always thought this game got it right with Sonic running as opposed to racing in a kart, as his main attribute is running fast. The controls do take some getting used to, as the characters do control as if they're in a kart rather than running, with the shoulder buttons being used to drift, which is a vital move to navigate your way around each of the tracks. However, once you get used to the controls, they do work really well, especially when using the 3D controller, but having to get used to them does affect people's first impression of the game. The game also has additional characters to unlock, including unlockable characters. There is a total of 10 to play as, but 3 of them are Sonic, and there's also variations of the other characters, so it's not 10 original characters. Each course has an emerald to find and 5 coins to collect, which adds an extra element to each race. There's also multiple paths across the courses and various shields that you can use to assist you. However, there is only a total of 5 tracks, which is not a great offering when compared to games such as Mario Kart 64 and Diddy Kong Racing. On the bright side, each character does have different racing styles and abilities, such as Knuckles being able to glide and Robotnik shooting missiles. I think the courses are designed really well, and it's a shame they never used a modified version of this engine to create a full mainline Sonic game, as it's very impressive. I would recommend you check out the excellent videos about Sonic R's development and betas on the Game Hut channel run by John Burton, who worked on the game and was a director at Traveller's Tales. They give a fascinating insight into the game's development and the effects used in the game. The Emerald stage really shows off the impressive transparency effects and looks excellent, whilst the game manages to provide a fairly consistent and smooth frame rate throughout, providing fast and fluid gameplay. The game also has a multiplayer mode, which Retro Dad and Modern Lad found some fun in playing. The multiplayer can be played in normal race mode, or where you have to be the first to find 5 balloons. Unfortunately, like the single player mode, there is a lack of content and it's limited to only 2 players. It would have been good to see 4-player split screen, which is available in the PC version, and a battle mode with some original multiplayer maps would have been nice. A good example of what could have been a fun battle map is an enclosed version of the pinball section in Radical City. Unlike a game like Mario Kart, Sonic R multiplayer lacks accessibility for new players and their ability to challenge players with more skill. Most of the levels in Sonic R are too expansive for split screen, which is compounded with a very low draw distance, which is significantly reduced from the 1 player. You often find walls appearing as you hit them. This leads to new players often not knowing where to go and getting lost around the levels, as well as struggling to adapt to the controls that take time to get used to. Whilst I am glad the 2-player mode is present in Sonic R, it should have been the highlight of the game, but for me it's more of a fun extra. The other Sonic release for Sega Saturn in 1997 was Sonic Jam, which consists of a compilation of the 4 Mega Drive Sonic games and Sonic World, a 3D hub world with bonus material. Overall, this is a fantastic package with additional options to play the games in original, normal or easy modes. You can also use the spin dash in the original Sonic and get extras using the lock-on feature. At the time, the game did feel a little bit underwhelming, as I had already played the Mega Drive versions, and all I and other Sega Saturn owners really wanted was a new 3D Sonic game to play on our Sega Saturn. We had already had a port of the Mega Drive Sonic 3D Blast, and now it was just more Mega Drive games getting put on the Sega Saturn. There was also no Sonic CD or Master System games, which I found disappointing, as Sonic 1 on the Master System is one of my favourite games in the Sonic series. The games on Sonic Jam are built from the ground up for the Saturn, and for the most part play as intended, although there can be some slowdown, but this is not often and does not spoil the experience. What would have been nice is if Sonic Team would have provided a Saturn mode for each of the games with enhanced visuals and effects to take advantage of the more powerful Saturn hardware, and even new 3D bonus stages. All these were provided when Sonic 3D Blast was ported to the Sega Saturn, and it would have been nice to see the same done with these 4 Mega Drive games. Overall, it's a great collection of the Mega Drive classic games that I've grown to appreciate being on the Sega Saturn more as time has passed. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect was the Sonic World section, which finally demonstrated what a 3D Sonic game developed by Sonic Team would look like on the Sega Saturn. I remember being amazed when I saw the graphics of Sonic World. Finally, Sonic was in 3D on my Sega Saturn, and it was even better than I ever imagined it would be. It looked to me more like an N64 game, and had clearly taken some inspiration from Mario 64. I only wish there was more, with only one area to explore. Playing Sonic World is bittersweet, as it's great to see what could have been, but also it gives a stark reminder that we never got the Sonic 3D game we all wanted, and how good that could have been. Unfortunately, by this stage, despite the next Sonic game, Sonic Adventure, being started as a Sega Saturn project, development had moved over to Sega's next console, the Sega Dreamcast. The main purpose of Sonic World is to act as a hub world for the bonus content for the Sonic series, such as artwork, music, and videos, with a few missions added in such as collecting rings, reaching markers, and finding tails. Now let's move on to look at the unreleased Sonic games for the Sega Saturn. At E3 1996, Sega showed the following footage of its new upcoming 3D Sega Saturn Sonic game, Sonic Xtreme. As a Sega Saturn owner at the time, I was very happy to see a new 3D Sonic game coming to the Sega Saturn, and magazines started to cover the game and show pictures with great enthusiasm. Sonic Xtreme had a fisheye lens, worked on multi-layers, and Sonic was able to move 360 degrees around objects. Sonic Xtreme looked revolutionary for the Sonic series, if not a little ambitious for the Sega Saturn hardware. It wasn't until years later we found out the development hell the game had gone through leading up to its cancellation, with various restarts to the project and team members becoming seriously ill. Watching this video, you can see the main levels are clearly running on a PC, and it was still early in development. However, a demo was available of a boss battle on the floor at E3 running on Sega Saturn, and it looked very impressive, taking place in a full 3D environment with character reflections. Let's take a look at the 3 prototype builds of Sonic Xtreme that have been made available online running on real Sega Saturn hardware. The first and most basic build is the V40 build. The demo features a fisheye lens and small test area you can play, although it's clearly at a very early stage of development with a poor frame rate, very few object animations, uncollectible rings, non-interactive enemies, and Sonic is unable to move up and down slopes. There is also no music or sound effects, so I have added in Sonic Marble Zone. There's not a lot you can do, but it does provide a fascinating insight into the early development of the project and the difficulty of getting it running on Sega Saturn hardware. I do like the concept of the Sonic Xtreme levels, but this engine looks like it's far away from being able to get the idea to work. This next demo is the Point of View engine build of Sonic Xtreme. Point of View were originally hired to get Sonic Xtreme working on the Sega Saturn from the PC version, although they ended up producing their own concept of how Sonic Xtreme should work on the Sega Saturn, which you can see here. This looks much more polished than the V40 build and no longer uses the fisheye lens. Although this demo is in 3D, you do just mainly run from right to left with no open areas. It's also difficult to pick up any speed. Therefore, despite being a good proof of concept, I think the level design used would not suit a Sonic game, as it's not open enough to allow Sonic to pick up any speed, which is vital for a Sonic game, and it also feels 2D in nature. Again, this demo has no sound, so I've added in Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1. Now, this demo doesn't feature the wheel rotation, but if you use the L shoulder button, you can actually rotate the camera in 360 degrees, which is likely a demonstration that it would be possible with a bit more work. Another feature available in the demo is a free movement mode, where you can move about and look at the level layout and also zoom in and out. If you look at the floor, you'll notice the textures used are very similar to the V40 demo, and you can break out of the level and run straight across the floor infinitely. This next prototype takes a completely different approach to gameplay and level design, which goes to show the turbulent development of the game. This is often called the Knights engine demo, although it wasn't actually produced using the Knights engine, it was using the Sonic Xtreme boss engine. However, it does look very similar in style to Knights. Graphically, this demo looks more like you would expect a 32-bit Sonic game to be presented, and in my opinion had the best potential out of the 3 prototype builds to be a good Sonic game, with Sonic having more freedom of movement to run around a bigger 3D environment, which allows Sonic to generate more speed. Despite many good ideas, the development of Sonic Xtreme was clearly lacking in direction and also how to best transfer Sonic's gameplay into 3D.
Why don't you give up?
Thankfully, we have some great Sega Saturn homebrew Sonic games to try. I am a big fan of the excellent work done by XL2 on Sonic Z-treme. This demo was released for Sage 2018 and uses levels designed for Sonic Xtreme when it was in development in the 90s. In this version, Sonic uses a 3D model as opposed to the sprite model that was going to be included in Sonic Xtreme. The game looks fantastic and runs at a stable 30 FPS. XL2's Z-treme engine is very impressive and uses fade-in, similar to Sonic R, as opposed to objects just popping in out of nowhere in the distance. The draw distance is a particular highlight. It's absolutely incredible in this game for Sega Saturn, and you can see quite far into the distance. Another feature added by XL2 is being able to control the camera with the shoulder buttons, which really helps along with the double jump to be able to navigate your way around the levels. I think the level themes are really good in Sonic Xtreme, and if XL2's version, with all its improvements, had come out in the 90s, it could have done really well, providing the levels were larger, more like the size of Crystal Frost, as opposed to J Gully. XL2 has also included a very fun 2-player mode, Split Screen, which is a particular favourite of Retro Dad and Modern Lad. In terms of performance, it plays really well in split screen with only a slight reduction in draw distance, but it's hardly noticeable in comparison to the big difference which can be seen in Sonic R's 2-player draw distance. XL2 has once again done brilliant work to get the 2-player running really well. I have videos of a full playthrough of Sonic Z-treme in both 1-player and 2-player split screen available on my channel that I'll link in the description if you want to see more. Both the 1 and 2-player modes have 4 levels you can play, and there's also a hidden picture of Sega to Sanshiro to find in one of the levels, which I'll leave you to look for. For 2-player, you can either complete the level together as a team, or once you're both good at the levels and know your way around, you can try racing to the finish like a battle mode. The game also supports the Sega Saturn 3D controller, and is my preferred way to play it. Sonic controls excellently using the analog stick. Since this demo, XL2 has provided a small update which features 2D sprites and additional effects to water, lava and snow. You also get access to an additional level, which is a version of the point of view prototype level. The scale of the level does appear to be slightly decreased compared to the POV demo, but there are improvements such as more enemies that now move, and also missing textures have been fixed. I like both the 3D and sprite models of Sonic used by XL2. The sprite model looks more detailed and crisp to me, but I like the camera being further away from Sonic 3D model, which helps to see in open areas and gives a more Mario 64 vibe. Let me know in the comments if you prefer the 3D model for Sonic or the sprite version. And also let me know if you think Sonic Xtreme would have been a good game if it had come out in the 90s, and which of the levels is your favourite. XL2 has released one more Sonic Xtreme demo, and that was for the Metal Sonic boss battle as part of the Sega Saturn 26th anniversary game competition. This is a full remake of the Metal Sonic boss battle, which was going to appear in Sonic Xtreme using XL2's own engine. The first thing you will notice is the game looks fantastic for a Sega Saturn game and runs at a frantic pace with a very smooth frame rate. The ground reflections look particularly impressive, and being able to choose between the camera being positioned behind Sonic or locked onto the Metal Sonic boss character is a great feature. Unfortunately, it does appear that XL2 is no longer actively updating Sonic Z-treme, but I for one hope we see more from XL2 on the project in the future. Now let's take a look at a separate Sonic Xtreme project for the Sega Saturn by Voxel. This is a 5-level demo which was released as part of Sage 2022. The title screen and level select look really good, and once the game starts, the first thing you'll notice is the fisheye lens is implemented, and I think it looks really impressive. Voxel has done amazing work getting this effect in the game, and they've also implemented the loops, which is really cool to see. I know the use of a fisheye lens really divides people's opinions about the game, but I think it gives the levels a really unique appearance. I honestly didn't think it would be possible to implement the fisheye lens on the Sega Saturn, whilst maintaining an acceptable frame rate, but Voxel has managed to achieve this. The fisheye lens helps your view so you can see further to the right and left despite the camera being so close to the Sonic model, and it also gives a really cool appearance of the world looking sphere shaped, which I think looks really good. The demo is a work in progress, so there are some minor bugs such as pixelization lines that go across the screen when playing on real hardware, and the draw distance can be a little short. But in my opinion, this demo with all its features is excellent, and I haven't told you about the best feature yet, which is the 360-degree world rotation, and it works very well. This is another feature I didn't think would be possible on the Sega Saturn. This demo is probably closer to the original vision of Sonic X-treme, with its fisheye lens, world rotation and loops, whilst the XL2's version provides optimizations in performance and gameplay, such as a far better draw distance, a stable frame rate, and an adjustable camera. They are both very impressive demos that achieve different goals, with both developers pushing the Sega Saturn hardware in their own way, to give two very unique experiences of Sonic X-treme on real Sega Saturn hardware. Both demos provide Jade Gully and Crystal Frost as levels, but the other levels in each demo differs, which is fantastic as it gives Sega Saturn fans a taste of different levels that were intended to be in the original Sonic X-treme. The boss battle for the Voxel demo is Fang, and you are given a large open area to battle in, which looks really good. Fang has a variety of attacks including sliding, shooting and a tail attack. There are some rings to collect and you can only hit Fang when he is in a vulnerable state. At all other times you just need to dodge his attacks. To win, you just need to hit him 3 times. The Voxel demo also has a 2-player, but both players are on the screen at the same time, as opposed to being split screen. If player 2 goes too far away from player 1 out of the screen, they reappear next to player 1. My recommendation is whoever is the better player goes player 1. In this case it was Retro Dad, although there was some debate about who the better player was. It did take a little bit of getting used to when we first started playing, but then we got into a good rhythm. What I really like about this type of 2-player was that communication was the key. Once we started communicating and telling each other where we were going to go, we really started to get into it and kept both characters on the screen for the majority of the time. A good example of the communication and working as a team is doing the world rotation with both players going round. It did take quite a few goes for us to get this right, as if one player steps too soon, the other player ends up falling to their death, but we did nail it on this attempt. While split screen does on the whole work better for 2-player, this actually worked a lot better than we thought it would, and we still had a really good 2-player experience. In an ideal world, having the option for both types of 2-player would be brilliant for the game. The type of 2-player in the Voxel demo is also very unique for Sega Saturn in terms of the mechanics and how it works. The world rotation does work in any level, although I do think it works particularly well in this level. I also think as well in bigger levels like Crystal Frost, where you get long stretches to run along like this, it looks great when you do it in sync in 2-player. In a level as big as this, you'd also notice the further you get along into the level that you start getting better and better with the communicating and teamwork, which leads to jumping in sync a lot more. As player 1, what I was doing is I would tell Modern Lad what I was going to do, if I was going to jump, if I was going to go up or down, or which way I was going to go before I did it. So this way we kept player 1 and 2 on the screen pretty much all the time towards the end of the level. As you can see here, we are timing the jumps really well together. I think where this type of two-player would really excel is where you have an experienced player and a less experienced player. For example, player 1 as an adult and player 2 as a child. Whereas for two experienced players like ourselves, whilst this can be fun, having the independence of split screen is the better option. Unfortunately, similar to XL2, there hasn't been any recent updates from Voxel on their Sonic Xtreme project, but I really hope they continue with the great work they've done so far and provide more updates in the future. So let's have a look at some of the other Sonic Homebrew projects for the Sega Saturn. Sonic Jump was originally a mobile game and a port was started for the Sega Saturn. The aim of the game is to make your way up to the top as quickly as you can. The game is frantic and can be fun, if not a little basic. But unfortunately the game is very unfinished in its current state, with the last update coming in 2013. Sonic and the Power Rings is a new project that has only just begun. Whilst there is not much gameplay at the moment, it's great to see new projects being started, and I look forward to seeing more updates on this one in the future. Sonic Ring World had a very early demo released for Sage 2022 that you can see in the video. However, since the demo was released, the team have undergone changes and the project has pivoted in a different direction. But work continues on the game, and in the latest update it is stated that the new team are aiming to submit a demo for Sage 2025, which is very exciting news. I think this is definitely one to watch out for, and I look forward to the demo being released and more information in the coming months. Next we have a Sonic Tech demo based on the Robotnik boss battle from Sonic Adventure. Amazingly, this was made in just 24 hours for the Sega Saturn 29th anniversary game competition. I would really like to see this one expanded as it impressed me, and hopefully we'll see more on it in the future. This full mod, Tails World, was released as part of the Sega Saturn 29th anniversary game competition. It allows you to play as Tails in the Sonic Jam Sonic World area. But what's really cool is that Tails has the ability to fly, which adds a new element to gameplay. Another cool mod sees Sonic take the place of Knights to fly around in Christmas nights. Now this is different to the Sonic Into Dreams present you can unlock in the game, where Sonic runs around on the ground, but more on that later. This worked really well, and Sonic can also use his spin dash attack, which looks brilliant. This next cool mod sees Sonic enter the world of basketball in NBA Jam Tournament Edition. There's something very satisfying about running down the court and slam dunking with Sonic, and I also think the facial animations used for Sonic are fantastic in this mod. Flicky's Flock doesn't technically feature Sonic, but is a Sonic style Flappy Birds game. The game is fun once you get into a rhythm with your button presses, and features power-ups and, amazingly, up to 12 players using multi-taps. Sega might not have included Master System and Game Gear Sonic games in Sonic Jam, but thanks to VBT you can emulate them on your Sega Saturn. The emulation has improved a lot over the years with each update, and the games are currently running well. As can often be the case with emulation, the main issue is with the sound, with also some occasional slowdown and texture issues. I hope to see more updates in the future, as this is great being able to play these games on the Sega Saturn. The emulation doesn't just play Sonic games, you can play pretty much any game you want. It's been a while since I had my Master System set up, so it's great to play these games that I owned as a child. Sonic 1 on the Master System is one of my favourite Sonic games of all time. After owning a shared Commodore 64, the Master System was the first console I ever owned on my own. I had a Master System 2 and it had Alex Kidd in Miracle World built in, so that's a game I played a lot, but I also had Sonic 1, which was the other game I probably played the most on it. A good way to get started with Sega Saturn development is with Joe Engine. This is one of the sample demos you get when you download Joe Engine, and there's also a level editor. Whilst in my opinion, with everyone going crazy for the new 3D technology in the 90s and Sonic's rival Mario going 3D, The pressure and expectation made it so the next Sonic game had to be 3D on the Sega Saturn. But in 2025, 2D games are very popular again, and it's arguably where Sonic was at his best. I would love to see a new 2D homebrew Sonic game for the Sega Saturn.
Get a load of this!
The arcade game Rad Mobile was Sonic's first ever appearance in a game and was ported to the Sega Saturn under the name Gale Racer in Japan. Sonic can be seen in the top centre of the screen as a figure hanging from the car. Sonic also made small cameos in other games, such as in picture form in Daytona and Burning Rangers. But now let's have a look at some of the more substantial cameos Sonic made on the Sega Saturn. In the level Reptilia Scene 1 in Bug Sega Saturn, you can race against Sonic if you find the coin and take it to Daddy Longlegs. I am surprised no one has modded the game and replaced Bug with Sonic. On the PlayStation there's a mod for Crash Bandicoot 2 where you can play as Sonic, and it'd be cool if the same was done with Bug Sega Saturn. The game already features the Sonic model and character animations, which should make it a more viable project. Sonic can also be found in Tamagotchi Park for the Sega Saturn. Now, it took me a serious amount of grinding and trial and error to unlock Sonic, but he looks really cool. The game was only released in Japan, so all of the text are in Japanese, but it is still very easy to play for non-Japanese speakers. You basically look after your Tamagotchi by feeding it, playing minigames, disciplining it, and cleaning up after it. This then increases your statistics, and depending on how you look after it, you get different eggs when it dies to unlock new Tamagotchis. As well as Sonic, there's also Tamagotchi versions of Alex Kidd, Pengo, and Flicky. In order to save your game, you do need the data on the pink memory card that comes with the game. However, you can get the save from Pseudo Saturn Save Data Manager if you want to play the game without buying the original disc and cart. Sonic Into Dreams can be unlocked by completing Christmas nights and opening presents. For many people, this was their first experience of playing Sonic in 3D. It's a really cool bonus present, and the end boss is also customised to look like Robotnik. The game uses the Sega Saturn internal clock to make changes to the level depending on what time of day and also what time of year you play the game. If the internal clock is around the Christmas period, the levels are covered in snow, and if you play the game on December the 25th, there's a chance you might see Father Christmas in the background. I got my copy of Christmas Nights as a free cover disc with the excellent official Sega Saturn magazine UK. Every Christmas, without doubt, to break out the game and have a play. It's something I recommend all Sega Saturn owners do every Christmas. Sega Saturn fans are still awaiting a new exclusive fully playable Sonic game to play, but hopefully in the future we will get a homebrew that can fill the void. Let me know in the comments if you would prefer a 3D Sonic game for the Sega Saturn or a 2D Sonic game. The PC has received some great Sega Saturn style and inspired Sonic games such as Sonic Mania, Sonic Overture and Sonic Galactic, which I am a big fan of. But for me, it's not a Saturn Sonic game unless it's actually playable on real Sega Saturn hardware, and that's what I would like to see in the future. You've been watching Retro Dad and Modern Lad, the YouTube channel. If you've liked this video, please give it a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.
Until we meet again, my friends.